Today's all about shadow. Welcome back, my creative fellas. Today we're going to be talking about something that many of you guys are afraid of, and it's nothing but shadows. I know painting shadows have been a struggle. Since Photoshop was invented, people have always been scared of painting shadows since they are really complex and you need a lot of skills to actually be able to paint some cool looking realistic shadows. And to be honest, you can never paint a shadow that is as realistic as in real life. But you can get as close to as realism as you want with some simple techniques, which I'm going to be explaining one of them today, and it is called, I named it, the 3-step shadow painting method, which actually you're going to be creating a shadow in 3 different layers, which I'll explain further. But for now, I just want you to know that this technique is only applicable when you want to paint shadows for some objects or something that is straight, that has a straight shadow or something similar. For humans or animals and stuff like that, this might not work that well. There are other techniques for those situations and those cases, and in those scenarios I will make more tutorials on how to paint different shadows in different scenes. But today we're going to be covering this method, which I believe is one of the most simplest. So without any further ado, let's do it. So let's get started now. I'm gonna create a new layer and I'm going to name this light shadow. Then I will get my brush and make sure it's a soft round brush, and I will sample a color from the ground, okay? Never use a black color because shadows are never black. Just use a color that's already in a scene. If there are already shadows in your background, use the shadow color. If they're not, just use the floor, the ground, or anything. Set the layer blend mode to multiply and bring your flow down. Bring the flow down all the way to about 2 to 3%. You don't want to go crazy with this. You just want to have a very slight effect, and you want to start building upon that effect just step by step, okay? So a soft round brush with a very low flow, about never go more than 5%, okay? Just 2% is good. And then start drawing like this from right to left. Make your brush big enough, okay? Your brush should be bigger than the legs of this chair, and draw from right to left in the direction of the light. If the light was coming from the other side, we would have done that from left to right, but right now we're doing it from right to left. And look how big my brush is, because the light shadow should be the biggest shadow amongst the 3. Okay, so I'm painting like this. You can see it. Here's the before and after. And do not worry about the mess that you make. We're gonna clean it up later. Then I'm gonna create another layer, and this time I'm gonna call it mid shadow. And as the name suggests, it's gonna be my middle shadow. And change the blend mode of this layer to multiply as well. Then with the same color and the same brush, but this time make sure the brush is a little smaller. Just paint on the light shadow, just like that. Start painting again. It's again the same process as before. Just go over the ground and paint the shadows on top of each other. That's basically the whole idea. Shadows are layered. You can just never create a shadow on just one single layer, because as I said, shadows are layered, and it's really hard to just use one single layer if you want to achieve a realistic effect. So with this mid shadow, I just draw some shadow over here, and then I'm going to create another layer, and I'm going to name this dark shadow, and this is going to be my darkest shadow. And again, change the blend mode to multiply, and your brush should be the smallest here, okay? So make your brush approximately the same size as the leg of the chair, and start repeating the same process. And this is gonna be your darkest part of the shadow. It's like the center of the shadow. So just do that and be patient with it. So many guys are just saying like, hey, why do you just keep your flow so down? You can just go for like 10%, 20% and achieve it so very quicker. But I'm like, I just like to build up upon an effect. Okay, I just don't like to just do one thing and then I don't like it and Control Z, go back or use the eraser tool. I just like to use a very low flow and then gradually create the thing that I want. Okay, so that was my dark shadow. Take a look. Here's the before, here's the after. And make sure to paint beneath the legs as well. Okay, so pay attention to the details. This is gonna be all about the details. So paint beneath the legs and take your time. I know creating shadows are just a very time-consuming process and you gotta be patient. And if you need to just go back to any of these 3 layers and finesse them a little bit, make sure to do that. Here's the total before: light shadow, mid shadow, and dark shadow. So these 3 layers are gonna be our final result. Then I'm gonna grab all of them, hit Ctrl G and put them inside one group and name it shadow. I will create a layer mask on top of the group and I wanna just clean up these shadows because I made a lot of mess over here. But I'm not just gonna erase them regularly. Okay, we need to erase them in a certain way. We need to erase them in a V shape. Okay, so we will do like this. We will go from the behind of the leg to the right. Let me just draw some lines for you. We will clean up the shadow like this. Maybe I'm gonna grab a color which is more visible in a V shape. So we go like this and this. Okay, so now I will grab my brush and I will start erasing the shadow in that V shape or in a triangular shape. Let me delete these lines for you so you can see better what I'm doing. And my flow is about like 7 to 8%. And I'm just gonna erase off this shadow I created in a V shape. Let me increase the flow a little bit so we can just get it done sooner. Paint with black on the layer mask to get rid of the mess and erase off everything that's on the side of the highlights. That's on the right side, erase every shadow on the right side, and on the left side erase everything in a V shape, just like that. So if I alt click on the layer mask, you'll see that I have created some sort of a V shape. That's what I was talking about. Okay, then after you have cleaned up the shadows, it is time to actually go inside the group and clean up the shadow layers one by one. So for example, I'm gonna go to my light shadow. I will put a layer mask on the light shadow itself. I will make my brush bigger and I will just start dabbing on the light shadow and erasing it off. Okay, just the end, just the tip of the shadow, I will just start painting away with the brush just to make it blend a little bit better with the floor. I will do the same with my middle shadow. I will just very slightly erase it off and it will help a lot to blend with the scene. And I will do the same with my dark shadows. Just erase them off. Just like that. Okay. So here's the before and here is the after. Actually, you can do one more thing here. This was just like a 3-step kind of shadow, okay? But you can add more step to it to make it look even better, and you can create a larger shadow beneath everything, or you can make these legs a little bit darker, because if there are shadows, these legs should not have any kind of fringes or white areas around them. So I clipped a layer to the subject, and with the black color I will just go ahead and start painting on the legs, okay, because they were like too bright, which they shouldn't be. So I'm just gonna make them a little darker. Here's the before and after. You see that? They were like too bright, so I just made them darker. I will do the same for the other leg. The area that is facing the highlight or the light source must be bright, but the area that's on the opposite side, it's gotta be dark. It should not be the same brightness. And you can bring down the opacity if you just did too much. We are humans, we tend to overdo everything, so just feel free to play around with the opacity as well. It's your friend. I'm gonna create another layer, and with this black color, make sure it's pure black, the blackest black. I'm gonna paint over everything, paint over the leg and paint over the shadows on the floor all at the same time. This layer is on top of everything else, so it will paint over everything. And this is something I always do when I'm done with the shadows and blending and all that stuff. I just create one more layer on top of everything, and I will just start painting on everything. And this is gonna add a little bit of more realism. And it's gonna help blend everything together a lot better. So there you go. And make sure to use the eraser tool if you have just messed anything up. When creating highlights or shadows, eraser tool can be your best friend. I will duplicate the shadow group and I will just put them on the other side. They are pretty identical, so I was not gonna create two more shadows for the other side. I just copied the same group and put it on the other side, and I think it's gonna work pretty well. Okay, this looks good to me. Then you can of course bring down the opacity if it's too strong. For me, it was too strong, so I brought the opacity down to about like 70%. Okay, here's the before and here is the here's the before and here is the after. And these legs, I'm just gonna do the same thing on these ones. I'm just gonna paint with black on top of them. I'm gonna create one more layer. I will make my brush a little bigger and make the flow and opacity 100%, and with white I'm just gonna dab on the right side of the image, and that's where the light source was coming from. This is gonna create like some sort of a feeling that hey, this part of the image is brighter That's where the light source is, and the left side is where the shadows are gonna be. Okay, so always do this. Always create the light source in your images. And I will do the opposite on the left side. I will just paint with black on the left side to create a feeling that, hey, this part of the image is darker because there are no lights over there. And I will bring down the opacity of this one as well to about 20%. Okay. So it's really nice to create some sort of a light source in your images. Here's the before and after. You see, it's a very small change. It's a very subtle change, but it just overall adds to the realism again. So as I said, it's all about the little details when you are doing compositing. If you do really want your composite to look realistic, you have to follow these steps. These are what just makes you different from the rest of the crowd. These are what just makes you unique if you want to stand out. Here's one more thing I'm gonna do. I will get my brush, and with the black color, I'm just gonna dab once. It doesn't matter where you dab, just dab somewhere. Okay, I'm gonna dab here, and make sure that your opacity and flow are set to 100%. I'm gonna dab here, and then I will hit Control T. Oops, I made a mistake. Make sure to dab somewhere which is not close to the edges. Dab in the center of the image, okay, somewhere about there, because you don't want the edges of this to be trimmed out. Hit Control T, hold down your control, and make it look like that. We want to put it in perspective. I'm holding down my control and my shift keys, and I'm just trying to adjust it. I want to create a black spot right beneath the seats. I want to create like an overall large shadow. I will put it over there, make it a little bigger, and hit OK, and I will just bring down the opacity. And this is gonna make this part of the floor a little darker to indicate that, hey, there is a shadow over here. Okay, here's the before and after. Can you see it? It is another little detail you have to pay attention to. So that's what I did over there. And you can keep on adjusting it until it looks decent. So I'm just gonna make it a bit larger to cover up the whole thing. There we go. And that's pretty much all about painting shadows using this 3-layer method that I taught you. There is nothing more to it than just paying a little more attention to details. And if you want your shadows to look realistic and your whole composite to look realistic, you have to pay attention to those small things. You have to play smart. I worked a little more on the shadows and on the whole composite, and after a little bit of dodging and burning and color grading, this is my final result. And that was it for today, guys. If you enjoyed the content, your subscribes and likes would be very helpful for greater and better content every week. Till the next episode, peace out.